That was Lily Allen, and this is Fern Britton sitting in for Jeremy Vine all this week. This is a question for you. When you're reading a book or a newspaper, do you hear your voice saying the words inside your head? This is called inner speech, but not everyone has it. And our next guest says that discovering that he hasn't got it, and others don't, has changed his life. Gary Chevin has severe dyslexia and believes his lack of inner speech could explain some of his difficulties. A team of professors is now researching why some people don't develop inner speech and hopes to find out whether there's a link to their development and self-control. Gary joins us in the studio now, and Rod Nicholson, Professor of Psychology at the University of Sheffield, is in our Sheffield studio. Good morning, Professor. Can you hear us?
I can indeed.
Thank you. And Gary is sitting here. So let's start with you then, Gary. When did you know you had no inner speech?
Right. Around about 5 years ago, it was a summer's day in June, and my wife goes up the paper shop and she buys a paper, comes home, cup of tea, in the garden, and she reads the paper. And this particular day, I was watching her read the paper, and I said to her, "What are you doing?" And she looked really confused, and she says, "I'm reading." And I said, "Yeah, but you're not reading in your head. And you're not moving your mouth when you're reading." She said, "No, I'm reading in my head." And I said, "What does that sound like?" And she said, "Well, it sounds like when I'm talking." And I said, "Just the same as speech?" And she said, "Yes." And I fell off the chair because I just realised at that one point that I hadn't got it. I'd never, ever, ever spoken in my head.
Really? So hang on, when you're thinking then, we're having this conversation now, what's going on in your mind? Just what's happening now, the immediacy?
Yeah, this second.
So when you're sitting, say, you know, just waiting in a waiting room somewhere, what are you thinking?
Nothing.
How amazing.
Look, this is the average day for the average person, right? They get up in the morning, go in the bathroom, and as in the bathroom, they're thinking to themselves, right, what am I going to have for breakfast? They go downstairs, they sit down, they eat the breakfast thinking, right, what do I need to take to work?
Yeah.
What am I going to wear for work? They get in the car, they drive to work and thinking, right, what I've got to do to work today, I've got to do this, this, this and this. They then get to work and they pick up, say, a letter and they start reading it. Now, when you are reading, you are turning the words into sound internally, right? That's a normal day. Average person uses this about 75% of the day. Next day, inner speech is turned off. You get up, you go into the bathroom, nothing. You go downstairs, eat your breakfast, nothing. You get in the car, drive to work, nothing. You get to work and realise you forgot loads of things, what you didn't remind yourself to get. You pick up the paper and start reading it, but as you're looking at it, you can see the words, but you can't hear the words internally, so your reading of capabilities are decreased. And your day becomes frustration, confusion, and really, really...
I mean, you're speaking so fantastically articulately about it. Yes. I'm amazed that what you're saying is happening at that instant. Yes. There's nothing that's going on anymore. Okay. So how does that affect your information sifting and your memory?
Oh, God. Internal speech is used for processing, analysing, retaining information, and reading. I'm a person who suffers with very poor memory. Organisation skills are really bad.
You forget your train of thought?
I forget everything, yeah. It's everything goes.
Well, your life is interesting because you're now 50, I think.
50, yes.
You were diagnosed with dyslexia at school.
Oh, yes.
When you were how old?
7.
7?
I was the first... Look, back in 1970-something, I was the first person in my city of Stoke-on-Trent to be diagnosed with dyslexia. I had intensive one-to-one special needs all the way through my school till I was 16. I left school at 16 with a reading age of a 6-year-old. Can't read, can't write, can't spell, and I can't add up, right?
Is that still the case?
Yeah, still the case now. At 18 I had a nervous breakdown. Lasted for 20 years. I ended up addicted to tranquilizers. When I got over this, I looked back through my life before the age of 18 and wanted to know what was the stressfulest part of my life, and it was school. I hated school, hated it, hated every minute of it. Can't remember one good time at school. And I put down my nervous breakdown to do with the stress and anxiety. I actually went through.
So what you're saying about this lack of inner voice
Yes.
and dyslexia is such a strong link. You've worked, I know, with a lot of people with
Yes.
learning difficulties
Yes.
and dyslexia, and you say that they all have the same thing, but no one has asked or discovered it before.
No. Well, no. It was first noticed back in 1905, and Rod will pick me up on this one if I say his name wrong. It was a chap named Vygotsky who noticed that people with reading difficulties didn't internalise speech, and that was in 1905. I've tested hundreds and hundreds of people. Most of them had learning difficulties. Most of them couldn't complete the tests what we actually did. I've also, I mean, I found this interesting, this piece here. I've tested a percentage of offenders. These people have broke the law, been in prison, and were still breaking the law. And I'd say 98% of them couldn't complete the tests, and from that hadn't developed inner speech. Now, if I can just say this, when inner speech is missing, analytical reason and logic skills are missing, because you can't go, let me think about that in my head. So that isn't there. But I personally believe, this is only my belief, by the way, because the research one is still ongoing, but I personally believe when inner speech is missing, conscience is missing. Because what is conscience? Conscience is the small voice in your mind. And if you haven't got inner speech, you won't have conscience. Now, people are probably thinking, oh, sticking up for offenders. No, I'm not. I believe you break the law, you get punished. But if there's a disability in there, we must look. I looked at the data on prisons. 50% of the prison population have learning disabilities. Young offenders, between 60 and 75% of young offenders have learning disabilities. If what I'm saying is right, and we can do something about it, and we can decrease offending, decrease reoffending, and save the taxpayers billions. Because I know about this inner conscience, because I didn't have it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you work on emotion, and if you were
Yes.
having a row with your wife, I mean, we all have rows with
Yes.
our loved ones, and there's some edit button in your head, the words come and you think, I won't say that because there's no way I can take that back.
No
But
edit.
you haven't got
No
that.
edit.
It's fascinating, Gary. Well, let's talk to Professor Rod Nicholson, who's in our Sheffield studio now. Hello, Rod.
Hello.
You've obviously met Gary and had long conversations with him about all of this.
I have indeed.
So the connection between dyslexia and inner speech is very strong, it appears. But what is inner speech? When do we get it? How important is it to us?
Yes, those are excellent questions, which unfortunately aren't fully resolved. Certainly, at sort of the age of 2, children learn to speak out loud. Over the next year or two, they get pretty fluent in that external speech. And then over sort of the period from about 4 to about 7, somehow a miracle occurs, and they begin to be able to speak in their heads. First perhaps whispering, and in due course being able to just think in their heads. And there's, I think there are big individual differences in the timescales for this. And this has been discussed by some of the greats in psychology, from Vygotsky to Piaget.
You say that it's the link between development of inner speech and self-control is an interesting one. Now, what do you mean by that?
Well, the most solid evidence on lack of inner speech with particular groups of children is with attention deficit, where there is an established theory from Berkeley that children with attention deficit have limited inner speech. And as Gary said, you can think how that might come about. If you don't have the inner speech gives you the opportunity to reflect between the stimulus and the response. And if you don't have that opportunity to reflect because you don't have the inner speech, you will tend to be impulsive. And I do think that that's probably a very important issue.
So where are we in the research then for the connection here?
Well, what we've done is with Gary's help, we developed a range of tests that can be used for children from about 5, well, up to adulthood really, that indicate the presence or absence of inner speech and also its fluency. Things like being able to whisper and then being able to say things in your head and then out loud. And there does seem to be a link in the research that we've done, mostly with my students informally. There seems to be a link between the number of risk factors for attention deficit and dyslexia and the fluency of inner speech for children from 9 years up, but not, as far as we can tell, at 6 and 7 years. And we think, therefore, that the development of fluency in reading, and in particular silent reading, helps the development of inner speech, and probably vice versa. So it's probably one of those chicken and egg things, that they both help each other.
Yeah, and also for those when you're in a stressful time of your life, the inner speech sometimes becomes so loud and so jangly you can't actually get your thoughts straight. So both ends of the spectrum are fascinating.
Yes, you're probably right on that. Yes, I try very hard not to get anything other than calm, but you are right that sometimes you can't avoid that inner speech saying, do it, do it.
Or just not shutting up when you want it to. Thank you very much indeed, Rod. This is fascinating. And Gary, thank you as well. We want to hear from you, of course. The phone number is 0500 288 291. Yes, Gary, say what?
What I want to ask your listeners is this. This is ongoing research. We need as much help as possible from the public. We are looking for volunteers, right? Now, I'm looking for volunteers of every age, from children up to adults and even senior citizens. But we need people with inner speech problems. Now, if they go to the website, and the website's on the BBC website, there's a section there called Testing Your Inner Speech. If they go and test their inner speech and find they have a problem, email us. We'll get back in touch with them, because it would be very, very, very helpful.
Good. Gary, thank you very much. This is possibly a breakthrough.
Can I say one other thing?
Yes.
Sorry. Rod, who just spoke to me, right, when we were doing the research, kept on about me writing a book. And he bullied me, beyond about bullying. And I ended up doing it, right? Now you probably think, you can't read, can't write, can't spell, whatever. But I use technology, and this technology is brilliant, and wish we got longer to talk about this, because it's brilliant. But I wrote a book while we were doing it, and the reason to writing the book was I'm trying to raise more funding for the research, because at the moment, with everything being like it is, there's no funding. So if anybody buys the book, it's for raising money for ongoing research.
Brilliant. We want to hear from you. Give us a ring, 0500 288 291, or email me on vine@bbc.co.uk.
For the last time, it's the last chance to feel again. But you broke me, now I can't feel anything. How can I give anymore? I can forgive, but not enough. You can't feel anything. For the last time, it's the last chance to feel again.
James Morrison and Nelly Furtado there, Broken Strings. This is Fern Britton, sitting in for Jeremy Vine. We've just been talking to Gary Chevin, who